Chapter 535 to 536. On Fujin's side, Fujin, who was just sucked inside the sword of Totsuka, along with Tomoe-masked DMS Obito, suddenly appeared on a strange plain with a red sky, red clouds, red ground, and red river. At a clear glance, it can be concluded that this is a strange plain with everything red in color. This strange red plain is none other than the sealing plane inside the gourd of the sword of Totsuka, and Fujin, who suddenly appeared here, was still in his previous posture of waving goodbye to Obito, and did not have enough time to put away that winning smile on his face that he had when the sword of Totsuka had penetrated through Obito's body back in the shinobi world. On the other side, the Tomoe-masked DMS Obito was also staring at Fujin with a posture slightly leaned forward. He was in the state of using Kamui on Fujin as if he was trying to suck Fujin inside his Kamui dimension. Fate is also quite ironic. Two people, Madara, Uchiha Obito, and Fujin, Hyuga Kuroto, who have been playing and manipulating the entire shinobi world in the palm of their hands for the past few years, fighting, struggling, and calculating against each other directly or indirectly, until only a few moments ago are now together, trapped in a strange genjutsu world, and became a pair of brothers in difficulty. The atmosphere is extremely embarrassing at this moment, and how awkward both of them are feeling is not something others can understand. Especially Fujin, he was completely speechless, and could only put down his waving hand helplessly so as to avoid more embarrassment. No way, his face is not thick enough to bear this cringy feeling. Fujin went as far as to use himself as bait, as a temptation to ensnare Obito into a carefully prepared trap. Fujin had calculated everything, prepared countermeasures against all the situations that may arise, and was even prepared to sacrifice this precious clone body of his if it could solve the threat of Obito for good. The moment sword of Totsuka pierced through Obito as planned, Fujin thought that the threat of Obito has finally been dealt with, and he was extremely happy and relaxed. But it didn't take long for Fujin to realize that fate is a real bitch, and Obito's luck is still against the sky. Despite considering all the possibilities, Fujin never even thought of the possibility that he too would be sealed inside the sword of Totsuka just because his chakra was linked with Obito at the moment when Obito was sucked inside the sword of Totsuka. Although Fujin wants to curse someone, cursing is of no use, so he could only sigh helplessly. And while Fujin was sighing helplessly, Obito also recovered from the sudden change of scenery. He was deeply shocked at this moment and finally realized that he has been calculated again. Although Obito is unclear about what plane this is, as an uchiha who has awakened the Mangekyu Sharingan, his sensitivity to yin chakra made him realize that he has been trapped in a genjutsu plane, and this genjutsu plane is not an ordinary genjutsu plane. Of course, Obito is still quite confident in himself and his abilities, so he is not too worried about this sudden change. So after recovering from his shock, he curiously looked around for a while. Observing and analyzing the genjutsu plane, Obito muttered, Is this your method of dealing with me? What exactly is this place?" Fujin didn't answer, just smirked coldly under his mask. Although Fujin knows that this is the genjutsu plane inside the gourd of the sword of Totsuka, however, this is the first time he has personally witnessed the power of the sword of Totsuka and entered inside the sealing space of this spiritual artifact, so when it comes to knowledge about this plane, he is not much different from Obito. Therefore, Fujin really doesn't have much information to answer to Obito. Seeing that Fujin did not answer his question, Obito was a little annoyed and sneered disdainfully. "You think this mere genjutsu can trap me? Stupid!" Then Obito activated his Mangekyu Sharingan in order to dispel the genjutsu. The moment Obito activated his Mangekyu Sharingan, Fujin focused his gaze on Obito and observed him carefully. Looking at Obito's attempt at breaking through the sword of Totsuka, Fujin had a complete expression. The current Fujin himself doesn't have any method to be able to break through the seal of the sword of Totsuka. If he still wants to get out of there, it appears that Fujin will have to rely on Obito to be able to break the seal of sword of Totsuka. But at the same time, Fujin really doesn't want Obito to be able to break through the sword of Totsuka. Fujin knows that if Obito can break through the seal of sword of Totsuka, then Fujin will also be able to find his way out of there. But if Obito is really capable of breaking through the seal of sword of Totsuka, then Fujin will no longer have any method to be able to kill or restrain Obito, at least not until Fujin completes his project godhood. Therefore, Fujin's current mood is quite contradictory. The two waited for a while as Obito started to dispel the genjutsu, but seeing that there was no change in the surroundings, Fujin immediately snickered in a mocking tone. Hearing Fujin's mocking snicker, Obito's face was hot in embarrassment and said, "This genjutsu is a little tricky, I'll give you that. But that's it. There is nothing in this shinobi world that can trap me, for I am Uchiha Madara." As soon as the voice fell, Obito activated Kamui, and suddenly a spiraling whirl appeared on Obito's Tomoe mask and started to suck his body inside the Kamui dimension. He can still use Kamui? Fujin's eyes condensed, and he stared at Obito with a stunned expression. However, it didn't take long for his stunned expression to return to normal, a relieved one, as Kamui didn't work. Although a spiraling whirl of Kamui appeared around Obito's body, when Obito activated Kamui, in actuality it did nothing. Obito wasn't sucked inside the Kamui dimension, nor was the seal of Sword of Totsuka broken, which greatly relieved Fujin. Because if Kamui could deal with the seal of Sword of Totsuka so easily, then this sealing artifact would become useless against Obito. Therefore, Fujin was greatly relieved. Sword of Totsuka is really a spiritual artifact. Even Kamui can't break through the seal. Although Fujin doesn't have much information about the Sword of Totsuka itself, the deeds of Itachi in the canon proved that this spiritual artifact is really strong. The fact that Itachi was able to seal Nagato's Edo Tensei with the Sword of Totsuka alone proves this fact. It must not be forgotten that Edo Nagato was capable of using all the abilities of the 6 paths of pain, thanks to the rinnegan. He had enough strength to single-handedly defeat the Kyuubi Chakra mode Naruto, Killer Bee, the perfect Jinchuriki of Hachibi. Even then, the Edo Nagato was easily sealed by Itachi with the help of the Sword of Totsuka, so it can be understood that the Sword of Totsuka is a really buggy artifact. And this is all the more reason for Fujin to be relieved. Of course, Obito's emotions were exactly opposite to that of Fujin. The moment he realized that even Kamui is not working, he finally panicked. How could this happen? Exactly what kind of jutsu did you use? Fujin said in a taunting tone. Do you really think that this one would tell you? Besides, such a pesky jutsu should be nothing for you. After all, you are the great Uchiha Madara-sama, right? Obito's face sank upon hearing Fujin's taunt. Obito really wants to kill the other party, but knows that he can't in the current situation, so he can only clench his fist in anger and speak, "There's no need to play around. I believe that you should also be able to feel it too. The change is happening to us since the moment we arrived here. You don't want to spend eternity here with me, do you?" As soon as he appeared here in this red plane, Obito was able to vaguely feel lethargic and drunk. He realized that this is the result of the genjutsu, which is making him feel drunk. Therefore, initially he did not choose to fight with Fujin, but gave priority to escape. Obito instinctively felt that if he really got drunk and didn't escape in due time, then he would forever be trapped here with no way out. It's just that Obito didn't expect this jutsu would be so tricky. He wasn't able to dispel the genjutsu even with the Mangekyu Sharingan, and Kamui isn't working either. With no other way left, Obito had to finally look at Fujin. Although Obito is not 100% certain, he has a feeling that Fujin is also trapped here similar to him. Therefore, Obito thinks that perhaps the other party would be willing to cooperate with him in order to escape here. Of course, Obito thinks too much, but Fujin is not as panicked as Obito and thus chose to remain silent. Fujin naturally doesn't want to spend the rest of his life inside the Sword of Totsuka. For him, although the threat of Obito is great, it is far from worthy enough to sacrifice his own life. Fujin is very clear that as long as he successfully completes Project Godhood and achieves Kekemora similar to Otsutsuki Kaguya, then what Obito, what Nagato, what Madara, and what Kaguya? There will be countless easy ways to resolve these threats. So it is very important that he goes out of the Sword of Totsuka and continue to work on his Project Godhood. But Fujin is not in a hurry to team up with Obito to escape the seal of the Sword of Totsuka, because Fujin still has another method to escape out of here, and that is Itachi. Itachi holds the sword of Totsuka, and if he has a method to help Fujin get out of there while making sure that Obito remains sealed inside, then naturally Fujin would opt to use that method. After all, it took a lot of effort to seal Obito in Sword of Totsuka. There's no telling if this method would work on him a second time. Therefore, Fujin doesn't intend to cooperate or help Obito break out of the seal. And while Fujin was silent, suddenly the red mist in the surroundings started to get thicker and denser. And along with the mist, a strong aroma of sake spread in the surroundings. As soon as the strong aroma of sake appeared, it increased the dizzying effects on both Fujin and Obito, as a result affecting their thinking process and cognition, and paralyzing their minds to process any thoughts. Obito became more anxious. "Damn, what are you still hesitating for?" Fujin was silent, and while trying to resist the tipsy feeling, he started to consider possibilities that would help him get out of there. And while Fujin was thinking, suddenly a voice appeared. "Fujin, I have yet to figure out a way to properly liberate the seal. To release out of here, I would need your cooperation." Fujin wasn't much surprised upon hearing this familiar voice, and asked doubtfully, "How should this one cooperate?" Obito also perked up his ears, listening attentively to seize the opportunity to get out of there. "Wait for a little while. I will use my Mangekyu Sharingan to trigger the seal from the outside. The moment I trigger the seal, make sure to use that opportunity and find the method to escape here. Additionally, make sure to remain conscious and don't fall into the genjutsu, because if you were to fall into the genjutsu, then there would be no escape. At least, I don't think escape would be possible at that point." The moment he heard these words, Fujin's face changed and he thought to himself with a sigh, "Well, it appears that Itachi can't bring me out without preventing Obito's escape." Sigh. This is troublesome. Although helpless, Fujin remained calm. He didn't bother to talk any nonsense, and was silently waiting for the opportunity as Itachi said, "Obito is now fully aware of the situation and understands that there is only one opportunity. If this opportunity were to be missed, everything would be over, and he would have to kiss goodbye to Project Tsuki no Mi for good, which is something he doesn't intend to do no matter what." Therefore Obito was completely alert at this moment and waiting for Homusubi to trigger the seal so that he too can escape. Fujin and Obito didn't have to wait for very long, and soon a red beam of light shooting through the sky appeared in the red plain. This is undoubtedly the opportunity Itachi created by triggering the Sword of Totsuka from the outside. At the moment of the trigger, a subtle connection between the outside world and the inside of Sword of Totsuka was established. Fujin and Obito looked at each other, and both understood that the opportunity has come. The very next instant, Obito used all the visual prowess of his Mangekyu Sharingan, trying to create a gap in the ceiling space. With the input of Obito's visual prowess, a crack finally appeared in the ceiling space, but this crack was too small for either of the two to pass through. "Damn it!" Obito let out a desperate roar. He used every cell in his body to squeeze out his chakra and used that to widen the crack of the ceiling space, but no matter how hard he tried, it didn't work. Obito understood that his visual prowess alone is not enough to open the gap in the ceiling space, but there is no one else here who can support him with visual prowess to widen the crack. Seeing no method working, Obito became more and more desperate, and finally thought of sacrificing one of his Mangekyu Sharingan. If he were to sacrifice one of his Mangekyu Sharingan, then his strength would decrease by several levels. Although his strength will decrease, at least he will be able to escape from this ceiling space. And just when Obito was about to sacrifice one of his Mangekyu Sharingan, suddenly, an inexplicably powerful visual prowess appeared out of nowhere, and instantly widened the crack in the ceiling space. Following the source of visual prowess that suddenly burst out, Obito looked at Fujin with a doubtful expression. "You also have a dojutsu?" Fujin didn't even bother to look at Obito, nor answered his question. The moment the gap in the ceiling space widened, his body flashed and disappeared. It's a pity that Fujin didn't know of Obito's thoughts of sacrificing his Mangekyu Sharingan. If he knew, then he would sigh in pity that such a good opportunity is wasted. Kahobito stared at the disappearing figure of Fujin, and his face became more and more solemn. Earlier, he didn't even consider the possibility that Fujin might have some sort of dojutsu, and now that Obito has witnessed the power of Fujin's dojutsu, Obito is more afraid of him. At the same time, he is also grateful that he did not sacrifice his Mangekyu Sharingan, because if he did that, then his situation would have become more passive. One after another. Just where are these freaks coming from? With this complicated thought in his mind, Obito also took advantage of the gap in the ceiling space and escaped out of the sword of Totsuka. Whoosh! The red brilliance of the Totsuka sword flashed again in the night sky, and immediately after that, the familiar sight of the destroyed village and messy battlefield again appeared before Fujin. Really escaped? Muttered Fujin with a sigh of relief while burning the sight before him to confirm that he had really escaped the sword of Totsuka. But before he had the opportunity to do anything else, an indescribable sense of tiredness swarmed Fujin's body. The very next instant he was completely paralyzed and lost control of his body. Plop! With a low muffled sound, Fujin fell to the ground head-on. No, no, no. Now I wouldn't be able to put any resistance under, thought Fujin with a flustered expression, and he was really panicked at this moment. Fujin knows that this loss of control over his body is mostly because of the outbreak of the curse of the Kaguya clan. As a result, the concentration of the toxin in Fujin's body has increased beyond what he can bear. The toxin has not only spread in all the organs, but has also invaded the central nervous system of the Fujin clone, so let alone extracting or condensing chakra, even blinking of eyelids is no longer for him. If no measure is taken, then this clone would be beyond repair and dead. But that's not the main issue. The main issue is that Obito is just behind him. Given the state of the Fujin clone, a single move from Obito is more than enough to destroy this clone. Obito doesn't even need to use ninjutsu or any other large-scale attack, just a shuriken is more than enough. Yes, as long as he throws a few shurikens towards Fujin, the clone would be destroyed. Such worry had just risen in Fujin's heart, and the very next second the figure of Obito appeared beside him. Undoubtedly, Obito did not let go of the opportunity in that short instant, and managed to escape through the gap in the seal of the sword of Totsuka. Feeling Obito's presence just behind him, Fujin's heart sank to the bottom. What to do? What to do? Fujin used almost all his brain cells trying to think up a countermeasure that will help this clone survive, but couldn't think of anything. Nothing he could think would work. This is the second time Fujin felt such hopelessness and helplessness. And while Fujin was hopeless and helpless, Obito, who appeared beside him, naturally discovered Fujin, who had collapsed not far away and seemed to have lost all his mobility. Looking at Fujin's figure lying helplessly not far away from him, Obito felt anger from the bottom of his heart, and he roared at Fujin, "Asshole, do you want to use this trick again?" What's wrong with him?" thought Fujin in confusion. "Do you think I will fall for the same trick again and again?" Obito growled. His chakra riled up as a result of an outburst of his anger. No way. Obito felt that his IQ has been greatly insulted by the members of a Matsukami. He gritted his teeth and really wanted to punch these bastards of a Matsukami into a bloody pulp. But he restrained himself because he knows that Fujin and Homusubi are again trying to lead him into a trap. So instead of going towards Fujin or attacking him, Obito immediately activated the Kamui to suck himself inside the Kamui dimension and disappeared from the battlefield. The speed and decisiveness of escape were so fast that even Konoha's yellow flash might have been taken aback had he witnessed this scene. Whew. The night breeze blew. Dust and smoke were rolled up. Huh? Fujin, who was ragging his brain for a possible solution, was also taken aback by the incredulously strange action of Obito. He didn't quite understand why Obito didn't take the opportunity to land the decisive blow and kill him, but chose to retreat. Only a fool would do so. Has he finally gone senile or what? Well, whatever. Although doubtful, Fujin was still happy that Obito is a fool and did not kill this clone of Fujin. Now Fujin still has the option of repairing this clone and wouldn't have to waste time, money, and effort into recreating and cultivating another Wind Nature clone. With his mood recovered, Fujin immediately used the Tensei Soul Descend to transfer his soul out of the Fujin clone. And while Obito has disappeared and Fujin's soul had left the battle, Homusubi, standing in the distance, sighed helplessly. The reason for his helplessness is obviously the fact that the mysterious masked uchiha also managed to escape from the seal of Sword of Totsuka, along with Fujin. Homusubi had already anticipated this result when he lifted the seal, so he wasn't much surprised, just disappointed in himself. If Homusubi had better control of the Sword of Totsuka, he could have prevented Fujin from being sealed inside it, along with the mysterious masked uchiha. And even if he couldn't have done that, he could have at least selectively unsealed Fujin out of the gourd if he was proficient enough. But no, Homusubi couldn't do either of these. Hell, he couldn't even prevent the mysterious masked uchiha from escaping the seal after Fujin came out of it. Homusubi already understands that the strength of the mysterious masked uchiha, who claims to be Uchiha Madara, is stronger than him after all. Masked uchiha can manifest the complete body Susanoo with wings on its back. So obviously the visual prowess of the other party is not only not weak, but is stronger compared to him. Additionally, the masked uchiha also has Hashirama cells transplanted into his body, so his chakra levels are simply monstrous. When combining all these facts, theoretically, it is normal for the current Homusubi, Itachi, to be of no match to him, as a result unable to present his escape. But Homusubi is still disappointed in himself, because had he been strong enough, he could have solved the threat of the masked uchiha once and for all. But he clearly isn't. Thus, he failed. Of course, there was also the option of not allowing Fujin to come out of the seal of Sword of Totsuka, which would have prevented the escape of the masked uchiha, and the two would have together died inside the seal. But Homusubi didn't consider that option for more than an instant. After all, Homusubi, Itachi, is just a member of the Amatsukami organization and therefore has no right to decide the life and death of other members of the organization. On the other side, seeing Fujin collapse on the ground, Kurenai ran towards him with a flustered expression and immediately urged, "Futen, are you okay?" Kuroto's soul is no longer in the Fujin clone body, so naturally there was no response or movement. But Kurenai doesn't know this, and after receiving no response from Fujin, she immediately panicked. She gently shook Fujin's body and shouted, "Futen! But no matter what, there was no response. Seeing this scene, Homusubi Itachi also quickly walked over, and his face under the Homusubi mask had a dignified expression. He did not expect that Fujin's injuries would be so serious and didn't know what to do for a while. While both Homusubi, Itachi, and Kurenai were at a loss, suddenly a calm voice came from the side, "Let me check his situation." Homusubi and Kurenai looked over and found that it was none other than Senju Tsunade, the best medical nin in the current shinobi world, who volunteered to check Fujin's situation. Seeing that Tsunade was willing to help Fujin, Kurenai hurriedly stepped forward and begged her, "Tsunade-sama, please save him." Tsunade took a deep look at Kurenai and could easily guess the young girl's psychological state and feelings towards Fujin, but Tsunade chose to remain silent on that matter and did not comment anything. Next, Tsunade walked towards Fujin, who seemed to be lying lifelessly on the ground, and said to Homusubi, "I will treat him." Homusubi, who has already received Kuroto's shadow clone nod from the side, nodded to Tsunade. "Then please," and stepped aside. Homusubi, Itachi, thought that it would be best to be treated by Tsunade, whose exploits in the field of medical science and Iryo ninjutsu are impeccable in the current shinobi world, while Kuroto, shadow clone, who knew the true cause of everything that has happened to the Fujin clone, wanted to see if Tsunade can treat the effects of the curse of Kaguya clan with her Iryo ninjutsu. Although Kuroto, shadow clone, doesn't have much hope in this regard, this is just a test in which Kuroto loses nothing. Even if Tsunade is unable to treat the effects of the curse of the Kaguya clan, she would at least become curious about it, and perhaps might even make some kind of major breakthrough in her Iryo ninjutsu after some research, which might also be beneficial to Kuroto in the future. Therefore, he had no issue in letting Tsunade give it a try. With Homusubi's nod, Tsunade crouched down near Fujin and started to check his condition. At the same time, a group of Konoha shinobi, including Jiraiya, also approached the place where Tsunade was treating Fujin. Everyone has seen how much Fujin has helped Konoha with all those fierce battles tonight. If it were not for Fujin's help, Satori, the monster that came out of the box of ultimate bliss alone might have destroyed the village, not to mention there were still several other extremely strong members of the Akatsuki organization that were dealt with by Fujin, including Hiruko, Pain Rikudo, and the masked man who claims to be Uchiha Madara. Nobody knows why Fujin helped Konoha to such an extent. The experienced ones believe that he might have some objective and reason behind Fujin's actions that they are unable to figure out for a while. But no matter the reason, the fact that Fujin helped Konoha in its most desperate time is still undeniable. Therefore, even if many Konoha shinobis are still wary of the other members of the Amatsukami organization, they have no malice against Fujin. In fact, many Konoha shinobi are very grateful to Fujin for everything he did, and truly hope for Sanin Tsunade to save him. After a while of analyzing and treatment, Tsunade's brows frown, and shock quickly became apparent on her face. Jiraiya, who is quite familiar with Tsunade, hurriedly leaned forward and quickly asked, "What's the status?" After withdrawing her hands, Tsunade said with a solemn expression, "His body is damaged beyond recovery. His skeletal structure has already been damaged completely. Additionally, the cells in his body are dying faster than they are born. It's as if his life is being burned out." Homusubi Itachi asked, "What do you mean by this?" Tsunade glanced at Itachi and explained, "Well, what I mean is that no one can survive after their body is damaged to such an extent. Normal people should have already died several times had they suffered such injuries. I have only once seen someone's body being damaged to such an extent. And that was when Might Dewey opened the Gate of Death and fought against the Seven Swordsmen of Mist on the battlefield of Kirigakure during the Third Great Shinobi War. To be honest, I am highly surprised that he was able to continue fighting those fierce battles with such critical injuries." Jiraiya's expression turned into a frown, and he asked quickly, "Was Fujin also using the forbidden technique of 8 inner gates?" Tsunade shook her head. "No, I have already checked it. He wasn't using the 8 inner gates formation, but the damage his body is suffering from is of a similar level, although not exactly the same, similar type." Kurenai asked anxiously, "You must be able to heal him, right?" Tsunade shook her head and sighed silently. "Unfortunately, there is nothing I can do. This is beyond the scope of Iryo Ninjutsu. His cells are dying at an extremely terrifying speed, and no one can survive that phenomenon. I am no exception to this. Even my grandfather, the Shodaime Hokage, who was said to have a terrifying recovery rate, is also no exception to this. Now perhaps only some kind of miracle can save him." Kurenai fell to the ground in despair. Jiraiya sighed silently, while Itachi's expression under the Homusubi mask was stunned. He simply couldn't believe it. He clenched his fist and seemed to be undergoing some kind of emotional stimulation brought on by the death of Fujin. Seeing the changes in several people, Tsunade remained silent and seemed to be thinking something. There is one thing Tsunade did not mention to anyone, and that is the fact that her Iryo Ninjutsu doesn't seem to be effective on Fujin's body. Tsunade is not sure what is the exact reason, but she did feel the presence of something in Fujin's body that was preventing her Iryo Ninjutsu from healing. Tsunade quickly deduced that this something is probably the cause of Fujin's approaching death, so out of her curiosity and necessity, she did not forget to use her slugs to secretly collect some of Fujin's blood and tissues in order to study and analyze them at a later date. Of course, all of Tsunade's secret actions were very clear to Kuroto, Shadow Clone, but he remained silent and said nothing. After all, even Kuroto himself hasn't found any solution to the curse of the Kaguya clan, and if he wants to keep this clone preserved until he uses it for the Chimera ritual in the future, then he needs all the help he can to deal with the curse of Kaguya clan. If Tsunade can find a solution with her medical science and Iryo Ninjutsu that can restrain the damaging effects of the particles of all killing ash bones, then Kuroto is willing to ignore her small actions. As for the possibility that Tsunade will be able to deduce the true identity of Fujin, Kuroto is not too worried about that issue, and even if Tsunade can deduce that secret, Kuroto will still not be too worried. After all, what's the worst that can happen? At best, Shisui will have to use Kotoa Matsukami on Tsunade to make her a loyal member of a Matsukami. So, there is nothing to be worried about. Inside a cave a few miles away from Konoha, suddenly the eyelids of a sleeping person open to reveal a pair of royal blue eyes that are clearly mysterious, yet beautiful. This person is not someone else, but the main body of Hyuga Kuroto. After Kuroto's soul came out of the Fujin clone, the soul traveled towards this cave, where the main body of Kuroto has been hidden. Kuroto knew that a Katsuki organization has targeted the Konoha village, so neither the village nor the locations around it are safe for storing his main body. Therefore, Kuroto created this temporary underground base in the remote area of the Land of Fire, and used this place to hide his main body under the watch of the Sandaime Kazekage puppet. As for the question of why not use the Angkor Vantian for this purpose, the answer is very simple. The aerial fortress floats above the sea area between the mainland and the Land of Water. In that case, if the main body was stored there, then it would take a lot of time for Kuroto to return to Konoha after changing his body. Therefore, he used a nearby location so that he can return to the village in a very short time. After moving around his body for a little while, Kuroto muttered with a pleasant smile, "No matter what, my main body is still the most comfortable." The Fujin clone is actually very comfortable and is perfectly adapted to Kuroto's soul, but as the effects of the curse of the Kaguya clan spread throughout the physical body, Kuroto's soul body also felt somewhat uncomfortable as controlling the body became more and more difficult. But there is no such problem with his main body. Therefore, Kuroto's soul feels extremely comfortable in the main body. After getting rid of the soul exhaustion, Fujin quickly wore the Yama disguise and ordered the Kazekage puppet to return to the Angkor Vantian, while he himself activated the Tenseigan chakra mode and turned into a Xian streamer, flying towards Konoha at an incredibly fast speed.